Welcome back.
To the Tiny Bookcase. I'm Ben.
And I am Nico. What you're about to hear is an interview.
A damn good one too. Prepare to learn.
If you enjoy hearing this guest talk, be sure to check out last week's episode where you can hear their story.
Ours too, if you're so inclined.
So, without further ado,
on with the show. For right now, let's find out some more about you. So, what's the first book you remember reading and enjoying is a key point there.
Oh, well, that's interesting. And I do remember it very, very distinctly. I was 5 and it was 101 Dalmatians. And I remember that I finished it and I went right to the start and read it all through again.
Hey, nice.
Did you read the first 100 ones or did you just start on that one?
Yeah, I just skipped them. I heard they were a bit disappointing.
It's the 101 that really sends it.
So the plot kicks in.
Yeah. So what about that book grabbed you as a kid?
No, that's interesting. I mean, I think it was the first novel that I read rather, and reading books is just amazing. You know, it's a whole world. You're sunk into this whole world of adventure and characters, and it's quite astonishing experience, isn't it? The first time you read a book. I don't know if there's anything that's been quite so mind changing that's ever happened to me since.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. I think a lot of people talk about the first film that they saw in the cinema or something as well, don't they? That kind of absolute assault on the senses that's very immersive.
Mm.
But there is something about your brain just getting stretched into the narrative space of a story and coming to life.
I think any art like that, seeing it done really well for the first time. I remember the first time I went to see a piece of musical theatre. And when you feel the music vibrating in your bones, that's the only sensation like book experiencing, because it does take over your whole system, doesn't it, when you're really in a book.
Definitely. Just to be clear, we're not talking about like an Amdram performance of Pirates of Penzance. This is like a real bit of musical theatre that you went to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I think that was the kind of thing that put me off musical theatre for so long, was seeing those kind of crappy performances. What was it? What was the first thing you saw?
The first bit of theatre I saw and fell in love with was actually Romeo and Juliet being performed in the Round. And then I believe it was Greece that I went to see. It was my aunt and uncle used to take me quite a lot.
That's very cool.
Theatre, because they've shown an interest.
Do you take any inspiration from plays and that kind of thing at all, Anne? Or is it all novels?
Oh, no, that's a good question. Yes, actually, in the first book, I took a lot of inspiration from the time plays of J.B. Priestley. So the premise of the first book is that they have this game world in which you go back and you change things in the past and you roll it forward and you get a new world. And J.B. Priestley wrote quite a few plays about the idea of what if you went back and changed something very subtly and then everything rolled on very differently. So I lifted a lot of ideas from J.B. Priestley.
Oh,
we won't tell him, don't worry.
So, Inspector Calls is the famous one, but there are other ones as well.
Yeah, I was sort of searching in my mind for the name of it, and yeah, that is the one that I could name. I think it has a vague, this idea of like toying in the past of some other place that's not where you're from, which is a bit of a vibe that I got from Utopia 5. The Hard to Be a God was something that it's hard to be a god, I think. Old bit of like Russian science fiction literature. That's pretty good. It's about like a futuristic society that has to go back and sort of guide other worlds through the Dark Ages. It's an interesting vein. Lots of people have had a go at it, but it still feels like it's fresh. So I like it.
So we've gone over what's satisfying about the reading, but what brings you satisfaction from actually writing?
So what I actually, or exactly what Ben said, and I finished doing that reading there, which is causing my readers' brains to go down completely different paths that they're not used to. That's what I like a bit of a mind fuck, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a casual mind shack.
Indeed, yeah.
So do you know that you've done that whilst you're writing it? Do you, like when you type out a paragraph and you go, "That's going to do that."
I kind of do. To be honest, it's just what's in my head. That's just,
yeah.
But I've had loads of experience to know that what's in my head is a mindfuck for everybody else.
I was going to say, you must get yourself sometimes. You must sit back and go, "Oh no, that's a problem."
I do, yeah. I definitely do that. Yes.
That's wicked. But that's how you know it's the good stuff, I guess. Just put all that stuff in and really mess with people.
Yeah. That's my that's what I'm aiming for, and I usually do achieve it.
That's 6 books in. I think that's pretty wicked.
You say your husband's a fan. I just imagine some mornings at the breakfast table, you're like, right, I'm going to try this one out. See.
Oh yeah, it's definitely.
See how broken he is when he leaves the house.
Yeah, I do that all the time. The only thing, we had a lot of debates early on about how much I was allowed to talk to him about the books, because I would reveal the reveals. So
what did you settle on?
Well, in the end, we agreed that I had to talk about the books. So he was just going to have to suck up the fact that he was going to have some reveals revealed.
Oh, poor guy. I'm just imagining if very strangely imagining being married to some of my favourite authors.
I was imagining you shagging George R.R. Martin
whilst he ruins books for me. That would be the worst of both worlds.
Well, George R.R. Martin has ruined plenty of books for everyone, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, wow.
It'd be your fault he wasn't finishing them, Ben, you know?
Yeah, he's too busy fucking me. Oh, God. No, let's get away from this particular vein. I don't like it. I'm just imagining his train driver's hat the whole time.
That and now else. He's going to make you eat his lamprey pie.
That's what he calls me. That's his pet name for me.
Oh.
Lamprey pie. Right, what's your favourite novel?
What's my favourite novel? So this is. I think it has to be. I'm always torn by a bit of Kurt Vonnegut, Breakfast of Champions, which is definitely a bit of a mindfuck. But my favourite one, if you haven't read it, is The Anubis Gates by Tim. Now I've forgotten his name, even though
it's Tim Powers.
Tim Powers, indeed, yes. Yeah. The Anubis Gates by Tim Powers. Have you read it then?
No. I was just quickly googling to get the name right for you. So go on. So this is what's the they're fantasy, but they're full on fantasy, and they are absolutely deranged. And loads of twists and turns, and a ridiculously rich world in the Anubis Gates. It's certainly my favourite fantasy novel. Oh, okay. So what's the because obviously a lot of fantasy it's sort of known as a genre for having rich worlds, isn't it? Mm. So what in particular about the world building works for you with the Anubis Gates and Tim Powers?
It's set in the 19th century, and I've read loads of stuff set in the 19th century. But it's a world. The thing he does is he overlays a whole load of fantastical stuff on top of the world that was actually there in a way that makes you feel like, yeah, that's totally true. That absolutely, I can completely believe that. So it kind of changes the real world for you.
Okay.
Makes you see everything slightly differently.
I've got to tell you, I'm looking at some of the different covers for this book,
Oh,
and
he likes a good cover, doesn't he, Nico? Especially with fantasy books.
I tell you what, that you would not be able to get the vibe by combining some of these. I've got one here. This looks like a book called The Anubis Gates because it's two sort of Egyptian dog fellows on either side of a door. That manageable. Is there a reason that one of these is a bright green clock with a clown coming out of it? Or
All of those things are in the books. The thing is, the book is so full of stuff. You could basically have anything on the cover. It's absolutely, it's just constantly new thoughts and ideas and characters and stories within the stories just coming at you like crazy.
It sounds like a really ringing endorsement. I'm very interested in this, in particular in this idea of like taking a time period and then sort of like adding layers to it to make it different.
Yeah,
that's quite enticing. I like that because I'm just sort of thinking about like where I've seen that before. The one that's jumping out, I know we talk about him a lot, but like like maybe Alan Moore's interpretation of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah,
that stuff where it's set in previous centuries, and then it's got but the stories are true sort of added to it, and there's like wild stuff with like Mr. Hyde attacking the Invisible Man and stuff.
I'll back anything that can have both Rupert the Bear and the Martians from War of the Worlds in.
Yeah.
In the same chapter.
Oh, but this sounds great. So the Anubis Gates by Tim Powers, fascinating stuff. I'll have to look into that because I do enjoy fantasy, and but on the same breath, I sort of struggle with like simple fantasy in a way. Like old fashioned fantasy kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think if you get like you read some things and the first 3 pages are listing like 2 character names, and you're just like, this is garbage. I can't read this. This is not good. And then other stuff really grabs you and doesn't let go. And it sounds like the Anubis Gates does that because some of the world building is already done for them. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, there's a whole load of stuff that you can just go, okay, right, now everything's on top of that. Yeah, and that makes a big difference. You don't have to go into loads of exposition filling in what's going on. Yeah.
And that must have influenced your own writing as well then.
Yeah.
Do you feel?
Yeah. It's much easier to base things on characters that feel familiar and settings that feel familiar, and not to have to redefine absolutely everything for people.
Yeah, I can see that. Whew.
So when you are crafting your own stuff, do you listen to music when you're writing? And if you do, what do you listen to?
Well, that's easy. No. I never. No. Never. Nothing. It's interesting. In the old days, when I painted more than I do these days, I found that I had to be quite careful what I listened to, because it would very much influence what I painted. Okay. I had to listen to I could listen to music while I was painting, as long as it was kind of like had no words and it was quite cheerful. But if I listened to anything with words, I found it changed the paintings quite a lot. And I don't think I would listen to music and write. I think it would change it too much.
So do you find, sort of outside of being creative, that you're affected quite strongly by music anyway? Or is it just that you get yourself into this like open position when you're painting or writing, and then the music kind of gets the grip on you more?
I'm pretty terrible with music. I like listening to music, but I can't listen to music and do anything else at all. So I get incredibly angry if people are playing music in the workplace. I've threatened to throw radios out of windows and things.
As a musician, I appreciate that someone understands that it is fine art that must be understood on its own.
Background. It doesn't work for me. Changes my brain onto different pathways.
How do you handle parties and stuff?
Oh, that's all right, because
That's okay.
Look, basically, at parties, nobody's saying anything very interesting, are they? Your chat at parties is not high art.
I like that. I like that thinking.
I mean, we normally go through the episodes for quotes when we're editing, but I think I'm just going to write that one down now.
Yeah, for sure. So when we've spoken a little bit about Star Trek and like how that sort of doesn't work for you and that kind of thing. What's the least enjoyable trope of fiction for you? Like, what's something that just, if you encounter it in a book or a TV show or a film, whatever, and you just know that it's going to immediately turn you off from whatever you're imbibing?
The trope, the trope I hate the most is fridging.
Fridging?
Have you come across that before?
It's ringing a bell for me. Go on, explain it.
It's where you have a character who is killed for only to provide motivation for another character.
Ah, of course. Right. Yeah.
And
very common in fantasy.
It's really, really common. And it didn't used to bother me that much because obviously, you know, I used to love an 80s action movie. Almost, and the premise of a fridging is the basis for almost every 80s action movie. You know, somebody's wife is either the wife, children, or the partner has, or the cop partner has been killed by the baddie, and that provides all the motivation for the main character.
Or in the case of John Wick, his dog.
Yeah, the dog. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, the best ones are when they pull a fast one on you, though, and you get halfway through the movie and you find out that the cop partner faked his death and he's working with the bad guy. Now you've got to deal with the conflict.
That's too complicated for me.
the whole Babylon 5 reveal. Yes, yeah.
I've been known to Babylon. What can I say?
Jesus fucking Christ.
That one really hurt you, didn't it, Brad?
Yeah, it did. You just stabbed me through the microphone. Oh, fridging. Okay.
Although it's a bit mean to reject fridging, given that, as I say, it is the basis for probably my favourite genre action movies. But it's not all of them, because my favourite action movie, and in fact my favourite movie potentially of all time, is Terminator, and that is not fridging.
Yes,
it's an attempted fridging.
It's specifically about keeping people alive, isn't it?
Indeed, it is.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to go into, especially because it there's definitely a highly gendered element to it as well. It's always the bloke who needs the tragic backstory, so his wife died or whatever. That's must be like 80% of that.
Yeah. Definitely.
The use of that trope.
And
it is pretty tight.
What's her face in the widow, the Uma Thurman in
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. Yes. So she's the recipient of the fridging motivation in that, but that's unusual. That was the twist in that one, really, wasn't it? A knowing twist, wasn't it?
Yeah, very, very much a nod and a wink. Fascinating. Yeah, no, I like that because it's lazy, isn't it? Really, it's not proper motivation. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It does. I think it's such a noticeable one as well, isn't it? You're like, oh, here it comes. Yeah, there it went. Okay,
yeah.
Right now we can get on with whatever the story's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think it's only recently that we've decided that actually it is a bit lazy. We were happy with it for years and years, decades.
So what do you think? What do you think precipitated that shift then?
Me too.
Me too. Yeah.
Like I was in. Why? Yes. Why is it so often the girl in the fridge?
The girl in the fridge.
It's like you can actually see it in action if you look at the Alien films. Because in Alien 3, right at the start, they fridge Newt and God, what's the dude's name? I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
all of a sudden for Ellen Ripley, it's about that as opposed to about being sensible and telling people to stop fucking with xenomorphs. And the quality drops right off.
Yeah, Yeah, it is. It is a sign of laziness. It's really. I mean, just write that. If you can't afford them, just write them out for some reason. You know, it's Michael Biehn. He's cheap. You're not telling me you couldn't have afforded him. And the girl, she wasn't even famous. I can't even think of what her name was. So she must have been super cheap.
Yeah, but they had a daytime shooting schedule, and she mostly came at night, mostly. They're dead, all right. Right, so other than deciding who you're going to fringe immediately...
Sometimes you use your powers for evil.
I promise to never do that again. Yes, other than deciding who you're going to fringe right at the beginning, what is your writing process?
Well, so I do a kind of... it's quite easy because usually from... this is total laziness, and I've realised that I don't know what I'm going to do when I finish. The previous book, leaves a... Usually, by the time I finish the previous book, I think, I really didn't resolve that quite as well as I would have liked to. And then the next book is kicked off by resolving that. So that's often the main theme of the book. And then I try and think of some other things that are interesting. What's going on in the news? What scary technology is being talked about? Fold that in, and then have a kind of outline of what's going to happen. And then as you write, it kind of changes itself because the characters start to change they make different decisions to the ones that you would expect and that kind of thing.
So is it tech first, then the story, or story first, then the text? It sounds like they kind of come in at the same time, but which one informs the other more, do you think?
I think they kind of come in at the same time. I usually try and have 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 storylines in a novel, and they're all driven by different technologies or characters or problems that need to be resolved. And then they all kind of wind around one another, so that it isn't too single track. But quite often, a lot of the story develops as I'm writing it, because I start Googling. I Google facts, and then while I'm Googling the fact, like I was looking up Svalbard, the island of Svalbard, today, and it started to say, and and the Wikipedia. My God, how did I do that? Wikipedia. It was starting to talk about polar nights versus polar twilights and the global seed vault, and you're thinking, oh well, how would that work in this new future? In this new future, what would be going on there? And would that be a problem? Would there be issues with that? And all kinds of rolling forward what's happening now, potentially for the next 20, 30, 40
It's
years.
fertile soil, isn't it? That what if?
Yeah.
And if you're actively searching for inspiration about the real world and then seeing what would happen if you rolled it forwards, I can really see why this is a winning combination for you, because it sounds great at least from the outside. Do you have like a practical writing process? Like do you have to write at certain times of day, or with a cup of tea, or like how do you actually put the words down on paper or into a Word document or something?
Well, I have it's Google Docs for me and a laptop.
Of course.
And I'm not very good at keeping. I mean, I try and do it. Yeah, I just do it whenever I can, really. But the first draft, I do try and set kind of 1,000 words a day or 2,000 words a day or whatever to just blast through it. Because I work for myself in writing anyway. These days I write for a living, so I can kind of fit it around other gigs, which is useful.
Yeah. Interesting to hear that you on that first draft just blast through, and then afterwards it becomes a bit more perhaps nuanced in its approach and stuff.
Yeah.
That feels very realistic.
Yeah, I know that not everyone does that. I know that Stephen King produces like one clean chapter a day or whatever, but I don't. I do rough, and then I have endless re-editing.
Yeah, I know he hasn't done it for a while, but I suspect that may have been a claim when he was on the Bolivian marching powder.
I'm about to give you the cleanest chapter you've ever fucking seen.
Oh, brilliant! So once you've done the first draft, and once you've edited it to the point that you can edit it to, how do you know that it's finished? What's the indicator that your novel is finished?
The indicator is usually that I'm absolutely sick of the sight of it, which is difficult because at the point I think it's finished, I don't like it anymore. I never want to read it again, and so it's at that point it can be hard for me to tell whether it's any good or not. But I think that there's no avoiding that. By the time you've read it 10 times, you just don't want to read it again.
So it's like a tolerance, it's a threshold set to how much you can actually engage with it before it has to be done.
Yeah. Well, yes. So I try and go put it out for reader feedback before I've hit that point.
Right. Yeah. So you've actually got some energy left to deal with the revisions.
Yes. Yeah. Because I usually get a lot of revision where people say, I don't understand that. So I have to put in extra chapters and things because too much is in your head. It's very hard to know whether you over-explained something or under-explained it.
Yeah.
So
who do you send it out to? Do you have an editor? Do you get your husband to read it?
Well, I am actually, one of my jobs is as an editor. So I do end up doing my own editing, but I'm the primary editor, but I get feedback from, I've got a book group of 2. He was, the other chap was another guy who I'll tell him to give you a call. And he's a very good editor. So I usually get a whole load of feedback from him. My husband's always is the first reader. So he gives me the raw, radical candor. I like it or I don't like it. And this bit worked well. This bit didn't work well. So that's very useful. And then I have a couple of other softer readers at the end who basically just say, it's great. And then that's whatever. So that I have the motivation to publish it.
Is there any way to just skip to that last bit? That sounds like I'd really enjoy it, but the rest, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the feed. There's nothing worse than getting candid feedback on your book. It takes, you get the feedback and then you have to put it away for a week and then come back but it's useful. You do have to get that. You have to feel bad about the feedback, otherwise it's not good enough feedback.
Becomes something of an art in itself, doesn't it? Taking feedback, I think even with the candid stuff, I think there is an important step where, at least when I receive it, where I have to consciously not react emotionally, and then also try and very rationally break down the feedback as to what's objective and what's subjective, and decide how much of the subjective stuff I want to take on, whilst definitely taking on board the objective stuff. It's a bit of a process, isn't it, when somebody properly gives you some feedback, but it's really worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's like someone looking into the pushchair and saying, fuck me, your baby's ugly. You dress it well, though. And you're like, what? Hold on.
I think that's a subjective judgment, you see.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think any of I produce will be objectively hideous.
Yeah,
some kind of goblin spawn.
Yeah, it's difficult because people are really bad at giving feedback, and not because people are really bad at giving feedback, and so they try and because they actually feel guilty about it, and they try and be helpful by not giving you the problem that they see, but giving you a suggested solution. And actually, you don't want their suggested solution because you could come up with 100 potential solutions. What you want is the problem, so that you can then come up with a solution. Yeah. You want to know what the problem was that they're telling you about, not the solution, the suggested solution. I used to find that in the early days, people would go, maybe your main character should be taller. And you go, really? Is that a problem? No, the main problem was maybe they didn't empathize with the main character enough. And so they came up with some crazy scheme by which they might empathise with the character more. But the problem was they needed to do something to make the character more empathetic.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the problem was he kept describing all the walls he couldn't see events happening behind.
It's a key part of the plot.
If only I could see over this wall. My life. Oh, I told you I was going to keep it stupid tonight, gang.
Yeah. So just before we move on, that I guess if you didn't do that with your feedback, then you would end up with something that's borderline designed by a committee. Sort of trying to people please.
Oh yeah.
People that haven't actually
written a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and it's well meant. That's the trouble. It's really well meant.
Of course, yeah. No, it's all meant in the best possible way, isn't it?
Well, to quote Shakespeare, fuck them.
But also like them because they do a useful thing.
Yes. So, if you, Anne, could take any book and you get to turn it into a different medium, it can be any book to any medium, what do you pick and what do you make it into?
I think the main medium these days is TV. I mean, a long-running TV series. What could make a really good long-running TV series that I'd really like to see? Has anybody read the Pliocene epoch, the Pliocene saga by Julian May?
I haven't. I don't know about it.
I have not.
It's quite good. It's very of its time. Well, it was. I think it was really famous in the late 70s, early 80s. It's very good indeed. It's set in the past. It's set. It's a really. There are two series, and it's a very full universe. That the Julian May, a name of their time, as a woman. So obviously, clearly chose the name Julian to avoid revealing herself as a woman and being fridged. It's a really, really good series. Really page turning and extremely well drawn. Would be a fantastic TV show.
I find it absolutely fascinating that you went medium first, then subjects. That's a real recipe. That's a real success mindset. I like that a lot.
That's how stuff gets made.
That's how you get things done. Yeah, rather than being sort of like, oh, I like this, and then that could maybe be that. Yeah. You're like, so TV show. What would make a good TV show? Fascinating.
Unfortunately, Wheel of Time does not make a good TV show.
Oh no!
Here we go. It's I forget the guy's name. The showrunner is it Ralph something? Rafe maybe. The showrunner that's put together this recent Wheel of Time thing has been getting a huge amount of hate online from Wheel of Time series fans, haven't they?
I've read all the Wheel of Time, and they are silly, and they're awful. But I did read it all the way to the end, which was like a year of my life. It has some really strong parts in it, and it's again a very fully realized world with a lot going on. I can see why, but yeah, the woke version is po-faced woke version is.
I actually hadn't read any of the Wheel of Time before the TV show came out, and then obviously the first episode, it's just Lord of the Rings. Like it's just Lord of the Rings.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
bad version. Like a pale imitation of the Lord of the Rings, like down to the sort of like dramatic female monologue over the start, like like stylistically just straight up. And I thought, no, they can't. This must be just a play from Amazon because they're making a Lord of the Rings TV show or something. So I went back and read the first one, and it is. That's what it is. It's just. It's basically just Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because the first one is the best one. And
Right.
But the others are more interesting. So, there's more interesting stuff going on in the later ones, but the first one is by far the best kind of page-turning adventure story book. Interesting.
Fascinating. Because I know a lot of the hatred has been from Wheel of Time purists who have said that it's not been done correctly. So that the woke stuff that you're talking about, from the point of view of someone who loved the Game of Thrones books and then they got made into a TV show, people really liked the TV show for the first 4 or 5 seasons, and then it dropped off a fucking cliff. It felt very much like I'm going to warm my hands on these people's pain kind of moment, because I was just like, very, very publicly and very in a very large fashion, I went through this with a different fantasy series that I really like. So it's it may have been a bastard move, but I have been enjoying it a little bit.
The trick is, Ben, to pick a fantasy series that they'll never televise, and then they can't hurt you.
They're coming for you, man. Everyone's making TV shows. They will find you.
Games Workshop are not going to let anyone touch their IP.
The back of a troll's cave.
Go Trek is safe forever. You heard it here first.
Oh, brilliant. So, we know... my question is, what have you got coming out soon? But I think we know that. It's the book 7 that you're working on at the moment.
It is, book 7, Death Ray. Codename Death Ray.
Codename Death Ray, that's a really wicked title.
Now, is the code name you're writing it under Death Ray, or is the book called Codename Death Ray? Because both are wicked.
The code name I'm writing under is Death Ray. But actually, now you say it, Codename Death Ray. I can't though, because it's out of. I've now got a kind of 1 to 2 word thing. I can't suddenly add a colon.
You're locked into a pattern.
Hyphenate both of them, and then use only 2 words.
I'd have to go back and colonize everything.
Oh come on! You can't do that to me. Oh, I think
Ben's been colonized by George R.R. Martin.
Squad for gum, decolonized, I think is the.
I can still just see that fucking flat cat wobbling. Bloody hell. Oh, right. So book 7's on the way. How long does it typically take you to write the book and put it out and get the cover up?
There's no typical. In the first 3, I did in 3 months each, all the way soup to nuts. But the last one took a year. It was a more complicated book, and I should never have started it with 3 time periods. It depends how simple the story is, really, and how disciplined I'm feeling.
So book 6 is out now. That means there's another 5 before that people can go and get. They can get them all from Amazon. Where can they find you online if they want to follow you for your thoughts and anything else you might be doing and for news on the books?
The best place is on Twitter, where I am at AE Currie, Currie. But it's a bit of a mixed bag, because it's a lot of my kind of tech ethics stuff that I'm involved in too. So it's all, but to be honest, it all feeds into the same stories. So AE Currie at Twitter.
Yeah, it sounds like a worthwhile follow. This tech ethics stuff sounds fascinating to me. So I'm sure people that are interested in the novels would be interested in knowing where you're at with stuff as well.
I'm definitely going after this. I need to learn about this ethics stuff.
Just one thing before we draw it to a close. I know you used to be a painter. Do you do your own covers?
I do, yes, because I'm too skinflinty to buy covers.
They're very good. I like them. I like that kind of art.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. It's been lovely talking to you about your processes and your outlooks on everything from our short stories to life to Star Trek and beyond. It's been excellent. So thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. Lovely to have you on. I hope we were as fun as the coffee shop.
There was a degree of pleading in that, Nick.
Please!
Please! We must have been as good as the coffee shop.
Please, I'll be a cappuccino. I'll do whatever you want.
Actually, I have to say the coffee shop were quite good. So I would like to. You were both excellent.
Equally.
It's fucking on you. You out there? You listening to me? You coffee bitches? I'll find you.
There's no way we're not ending on that. That's got to be the end. Fade to black. Oh. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?